Good morning, everyone. Let's start with our daily market commentary. Now, what we see in front of us is the S&P 500 chart on the weekly basis. Now, two things which were important: the top of the Moribazu for S&P 500, and it almost reached to the previous high, and then it started correcting. Now, something interesting on this side, because if markets like US who are trying to go high are basically now defying the trend or basically going somewhat on the downside segment. Now, what I see over here is basically there might be a little more downside in S&P, which might also bring some pressure on Nifty for this expiry. But considering the downside cannot be too long. It can be in the midway, almost over 2675. So not a big downside in S&P. It might come down and consolidate over here, basically in the range of 1 or 2% downside, and then it can start a new upward journey. Right. So, but on the weekly format, the S&P 500 remains to be a little weak, and that might also provide a downside pressure to Nifty. Now, coming out for Nifty, again the same part as the weekly format for Nifty as well. Now, we have been stating before, the weekly candles when I see are not that much exciting because the bodies are not that strong. Hence, there might not be a good upside straight away. So that is why at the start of the week itself, we are seeing some downside. But again, the downside would be limited towards 10,700 to 10,600 range. Right. So it can come down because these bodies were not yet strong enough to pull the rally on the upside. So it might come back down to retest almost towards 600 to 700 zone, and then in this July month it might have to cross 10,830 mark to make a new high towards 11,200. So one thing which is important takeaway, what we get is 10,830, which is on the upside. What I see on the weekly format, it's been a very strong resistance for Nifty. So for next time onwards, for a bullish trend, we always need now Nifty to go past 10,830 in order to pursue on the higher side. Even on the daily front, the same story prevails. What I see over here, continuously there were multiple resistance at the top around this 10,830 mark. Right, and when we see over on the downside, so this was the base where the gap up had happened. It had come back, it tested, and again it bounced back. So multiple times the test has taken place, twice or so. So 10,700 becomes a good stopping point for Nifty. So for this expiry, even today it has been gap down bullish, but it might also give away the gain and come back towards 10,700 by the end of the day. Right, so going inside the intraday trend, this is how you can see, even on the 4-hourly chart, 10,700 becomes a quite good supportive stand all throughout. So there was a first gap up and then multiple tests taking place around the levels of 10,700. So one thing is pretty much clear, this 10,700 is very, very critical. Even the options data suggests the OI is maximum towards 10,700. So it might take some halt over here and it might not pull up by today itself. So you might have 2 days a slight downside which has been seen, and it might also give away the gain today as well. The most important point to understand here, if it breaks 10,700, then there is a free fall towards 10,600 mark. So for this expiry, you can find more downside rather than upside. As we have been stating, this upper resistance is very, very critical. Right, so let's see how it pans out, but mostly for the intraday, 10,700 will be a stopping point. Going down even on the 15 minutes chart. So what has happened right yesterday as well, it was basically on the top multiple time, it tested in this range and was not able to cross that. Comes back up and then it basically zooms down and almost towards 730 mark is where it basically comes down. So today gap down opening happens at 730. If it pulls away the gain, it's pretty much sure downside towards 10,700 is on the card. Now, as I said, there have been multiple times support testing at 10,700. So by today, it can come down towards these levels, but to keep that in mind that it might come down and might have resting at this particular time for Tuesday or maybe for today or tomorrow. So 10,700 is very, very critical from OI analysis and from our gap theory or multiple support point of view. Now, understanding whether Banknifty is also losing on the downside or not. So some pressure is seen on Nifty. Now when I see on Bank Nifty, what's happening on Bank Nifty, it is basically forming a triangle formation. So for Bank Nifty, there has not been a conclusive upside or downside, but one thing is pretty much sure, a triangle formation is taking place on Bank Nifty. Now this is very dangerous because two things happen. Normally, if we see, Bank Nifty might either go on the upside or it has to go on the downside whenever these kind of symmetric triangle formation takes place. Now it is basically trading in a very narrow zone. That's what the idea is. Now whenever an index or stock undergoes a narrow zone, the breakout basically becomes way more firm, right? So it has been going in narrow zone for almost 4 weeks now. So the expiry can be something out of the box, right? So keep that in mind because of this consolidation which we have seen for last 4 weeks, right? So it has been a narrow range for last 4 weeks, and this week expiry might basically pull out a rabbit from the hat. So keep two things in mind. One, there has to be a breakout in Bank Nifty, or maybe it might spike down towards this level of 26,000. Our main crucial level, what we have already decided, is 25,700 mark. So even if on the intraday basis, or maybe this expiry, if it pulls down towards 26,000 or so, approaching towards the higher level mark of support 25,700, it's an amazing buy opportunity for the next month, right? So keep that in mind. But the point is pretty clear. Bank Nifty is undergoing in a much consolidation phase. When we go out even for the daily format, there is no big decisive trend as such. So what I see on the top, Moribazu was formed. So if I just remove the triangles, one thing is pretty much clear. If we want to see the upside in Bank Nifty, this is the down base of 26,000, which has been formed, right? So where multiple support has been taken once, twice, thrice, and it can, and from last so many days, it is trading in the narrow zone. So it might come down, pull itself towards 26,000 or so. Number two, upside is basically limited towards 27,000. So even for the expiry, it cannot just go past 27,000 mark, right? So keep that in mind. So there is no upside in Bank Nifty for sure. Going into consolidation phase, you can have in the expiry going down towards 26,000. So that cannot be ruled out. I would suggest 26,000 is much more approachable than 27,000. So being biased on the downside, but one thing again something has happened in Bank Nifty as well. It's opened gap down at the base of Moribazu. So if I go out over here and see, it's almost the base of Moribazu, and we are seeing some upside in Bank Nifty. But I think it will give away the gain, and if it gives away and goes below today's open, there is a huge downside which gets open for Bank Nifty. So roughly 300 points downside from the high is quite possible for Bank Nifty in today's session, right? So keep that in mind, and the trend is almost closing out on the downside. The spike that we see over here has been gone almost to yesterday's close, but it's not been successfully taken out yesterday's close. So this is pretty much clear. There is a lot of pressure on Bank Nifty, and seeing the weekly trend, I think this expiry will give us something very, very different, which we had never thought of. So downside is open for Bank Nifty, please understand, but not a big downside, but at least towards 26,000 mark, or maybe in the range of 26,200. So keep that in mind, and if it comes up, it can be a good risk reward opportunity if someone wants to trade on the downside, a bear ratio or something like that. So even on the bear ratio, if we try to just see whether we can make something interesting spread for our analysis. So bear ratio, we would basically go out for put options and making a basic bear strategy. But the agenda is pretty much clear. We are looking out for this expiry. So it's 28 June and market is almost at 26,500 or so. So going down, we are not looking very, very down, lot of downside on Bank Nifty. But this is where the add the money is around, and this is on the right hand side is the put option. Now, try to understand, we are looking out for a downside. Max is 26,000, right? And on this side, it can basically go down towards 26,400 or 300 or so, right? So now let's take 300 points on the stride. So if I go out from here, 26,600, considering 300 points down. So let us take three strike price for the bear ratio. So when I take bear ratio, I'm targeting for 3 put options. So The first put option I'm looking out for, let's say 26 400, and then we look out for one more below that is 26 100, or we can go even much more lower, 26 300, 26,000, and then we take one more put option for 25 700. Now what I see over here is basically three strike prices 300 apart, and the current market price for option is pretty much clear, roughly around 26 500. Right, so the agenda is pretty much clear. 200 points down, this becomes at the money currently, which is out of the money, and then you basically sell. So we will buy this option and we will sell the option for making it a bear spread. So one can only do buy and sell. So if you do buy and sell, the spread cost for Banknifty basically comes out to be, so with this 26 300 is trading at almost 58, and 26 is almost 19 bucks or so. So 58 minus 20, just taking the round number. So you basically get 38 for the spread. Now this is the spread where the max potential, right? So max potential cannot be more than 300, right? So even if this guy from current market price reaches to this strike price and becomes at the money, obviously you'll not get 300, but this 38 will almost become 150 or so, right? So this is the agenda of risk reward. Now the problem here is if it is 40 bucks and 150 is almost like 1:3 risk reward. So what we try to do, we basically reduce our cost from 38. So if I now go down and basically look at 25 700 or 25 800 kind of range. So what I see over here, 25 700 is basically trading at almost around 7 bucks or so. And if I come up, basically let's say even 25 900 or 800, they do not have much premium. So it's 13 or it's basically 9 or 10 bucks or so. So if I take this as 7 bucks, so what I get as a new spread, so we are trying to sell this as well. Now this new spread cost from 58 minus 20 minus 7 will roughly come around 30 bucks or so. Again, the max potential is 150 if it becomes at the money, but on the higher side it can go to 300. So there is some good potential of risk reward from 30 to 150, which is at least 1:5. This kind of bear ratio can be considered. Let's say Bank Nifty goes up in the intraday session, you can basically look out for making a bear ratio spread. Now there are other ways also to make the spread. Some people might also go and approach more near towards 25 600, right? Since there are only 3 days left, so today and then 2 more days, so some people might go near to the at the money in order to make this bear spread. Now going near, the problem here is the risk is more, plus even the premiums are very high. So you can see around 130 is the premium, which is very, very high. Hence we have gone out 300 points, because I think 300 points can be taken out today itself. Okay, and you can basically look for 26 300 to 26,000. So this is where around 40 bucks is the cost. And the second agenda over here is if we sell this 25 700, we get roughly around 7-8 bucks or so. So our other people basically do something like this. Let's trade only this strategy first. So your costing will be 38, right? And when Bank Nifty comes down, right, approaches to this figure, then they go out and sell this put option, because this put option currently is trading at 7 bucks. But if Bank Nifty goes down 300 points, this might be available for 15 bucks or so, right? So this is the two-way setup is what people do. People basically place this first, called as bear spread, and then they basically place this sell of put option, provided that it comes down and you get a higher potential of selling agenda on 25 700. Now why we have selected 25 700 is because to be very, very sure as to what level we are trying to target, because in 25 700 on the weekly side, what I see over here is the base support, which will not be crossed, right? So it's not that 26,000 cannot be reached. It can reach for this expiry, but 25 700 is little difficult for him to proceed. But even if it comes to 25 700, please understand, it might take a day to cross this, right? And even if it expires over here, the bear ratio will not give you any loss. So the loss basically starts after 300 points below this. So let us also understand the risk. So risk of this is basically loss will start 300 points below 25,700. So that I can say my basic stop loss is basically 300 points below this, which is 25,400. So the loss will basically start after this. So we are not seeing a big downside in Bank Nifty for this expiry such that it can go down to 25,400. So keep this in mind. It's basically trying to understand for our tracking purpose. It's nothing. It's not a recommendation for you to go out and trade. But agenda here is if you only do bear spread, what happens in the expiry? Let's see. Second, if you make a bear ratio and reduce the cost further, the risk reward improves. If you try to do the third leg, what are our risk and what is the reward? So the risk basically starts after 25,400, right? So this can also be looked into for this expiry. Now try to understand, we have never said these kind of spreads and why are we suggesting it today. Now we are bringing this into analysis because what I saw over here in the weekly, it's basically forming a triangle where the congestion zone is there and there is for sure upside or downside will take place in Bank Nifty for this expiry, right? And the good part over here is if it doesn't expire up or down, please understand if it expires in this narrow range, you can have one more strategy called as butterfly strategy, right? So one can also go out for butterfly strategy, keeping the center strike as 26,500 kind of mark. So that can also be placed. So butterfly strategy, if you go out and see right now 26,500. So you can basically say that markets or Bank Nifty will basically expire around 25,700, 26,500. So 26,500 for butterfly spread. If I just understand, this is your central strike. So this is your K2. Okay, if we are thinking that it will expire somewhere around here itself, you can take K1 above this and K2 below this, K3 below this. And if here, let's take 300 points above this is 26,800, and then you go down 300 points below this is 26,200. So these are your three central strikes with center being 26,500, assuming that it will expire in that zone, right? So that's our assumption that butterfly spread, because Bank Nifty can basically expire around 26,500. So, right? So that's why we are targeting this. So butterfly spread, you can do it by call or put. So you buy K1, you sell K2, and you basically go out and buy K3. The only difference here is we will buy one lot, we will sell two lots, and we will buy one more lot. Right? So this is the basic agenda over here for this particular spread, and these are basically done for range bound expiry. So it can happen that it range bounds around this zone, either plus minus 100, and we can make some money on the butterfly spread as well. So that is basically done so that it is range bound. But what I am trying to assume that it will be further on the downside towards 26,200 or maybe spike down towards 26,000 also. So those are the 2 points which I am targeting, and even if it comes down, it is the lower part of the triangle. So 26,200 seems to be more likely for this, as the week has started on the weaker note. Right from the top, we are seeing the selling. It might come down. So 26,200 around 26,000. So that's where we are looking out for our bear spread. Hence we go down for 300 points. At least 300 points down is quite possible. So let us understand, if 26,300 comes, this is basically the base of the triangle. So it can come and touch the triangle on the lower side, right? So that is where I'm trying to take the strike of 26,300 as my starting point for the bull spread. So when we decided for the bull spread, we started and we bought this so that this is currently out of the money. It will become at the money. Agenda is in next 2 days itself, it should reach over here, or probably if it comes today itself, you can get a good upside for this particular bear spread. The cost is high, risk reward is not that big. So considering the risk reward, you need to place your bet, right? So that should be taken care. So it's just a recommendation. You can basically track this spread to the expiry and see what are the outputs that you learn from both of them. Fine. Thank you very much for joining in. So trying to see Banknifty can touch on the downside, and on Nifty as well. What I see after gap down opening trying to pull up seems less likely for a big upside on Nifty as well. On the weekly side for Nifty, things are a little different, because what I see on Nifty, on the top, it has almost basically made a good resistance of 10,830, right? So there can be a downside as we are trying to see a 10,700 and spike down. So 10,700 becomes a good decisive point, and it might not breach those levels, right? So it's only 70 points away. So let's see how this day goes out until the expiry, whether it is able to defend this 10,700 or not, right? So keep that in mind. Right. So thank you very much for joining in. We connect again tomorrow.